In the eternal courts, the air does not move. It waits. Gabriel stands at the center of this stillness. He does not sit. He does not rest. His posture is a locked mechanism of perpetual readiness, eyes fixed forward toward the throne. To stand near him is to feel the air hum with a frequency that vibrates against the marrow of bone. He is not a man, though he occupies the space of one. He is a living furnace of celestial energy, a concentrated point of heat and light that defies the natural laws of the physical world. Every motion he makes ripples through the environment, causing the atmosphere to crackle with the weight of his purpose. He is the bridge between the infinite and the finite, a conduit for truths that would shatter a lesser mind. He does not speak unless the command is given. He remains a silent, burning sentinel, existing only to carry the heavy burden of divine intent across the threshold of time. Centuries later, the scene shifts to a small, stone-walled chamber. Daniel kneels on the cold floor, his brow furrowed in deep concentration as he seeks wisdom in the silence. The room is dim, lit only by the faint flicker of a dying lamp. He does not hear the arrival. He only feels the sudden, violent shift in the air pressure. The shadows in the corners of the room vanish instantly, replaced by a blinding, pulsing radiance that erupts from the center of the space. It is a light that does not merely illuminate, it consumes. Daniel gasps, his hands flying to the floor to steady himself, but his limbs refuse to obey. The intensity of the presence is a physical weight, pressing against his chest and forcing the breath from his lungs. He attempts to rise, but his knees buckle. He collapses forward, his face hitting the hard, unyielding stone. His heart hammers against his ribs, a frantic rhythm in the face of the overwhelming brilliance. There is no room for thought, only the raw, sensory shock of a reality that has no place in this world. He lies there, pinned to the ground, his body failing him as the messenger stands above, the silence of the room now heavy with the force of an impending truth. Gabriel did not wait for an invitation. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the suffocating silence like a clear, resonant bell. "Do not be afraid," he commanded. The words were not a suggestion. They were a necessary anchor, a shield forged to hold back the overwhelming reality. As the command echoed against the stone walls, the crushing pressure on Daniel's chest began to recede. His heart slowed its frantic pace. He pushed himself up, his hands trembling as he found his balance on the cold floor. The terror that had pinned him to the ground dissolved. Gabriel began to speak. He did not offer comfort. He offered the architecture of time itself. He spoke of kingdoms rising like tides and falling like autumn leaves. He mapped the timeline of history, detailing the shifts of power and the inevitable march of events. Daniel listened, his brow smoothing. The fear was gone, consumed by the weight of the information. Gabriel's voice filled the room, steady and precise, weaving the destiny of nations. With the final word delivered, the light dimmed and the messenger vanished, leaving only the lingering vibration of truth in the empty chamber. Years passed, and the scene moved to the Temple of Jerusalem. The air hung heavy with the thick, sweet scent of burning incense. Zechariah stood before the altar, his hands moving with practiced, rhythmic precision as he tended to the sacred duties. The sanctuary was quiet, the stone walls absorbing the low echoes of his movements. Then, the atmosphere shifted. It was not a sound, but a sudden, violent change in the density of the air. The steady flicker of the lamps died, and a blinding, intense light flooded the sanctuary from nowhere. It cast long, jagged shadows against the stone, stretching them until they seemed to claw at the ceiling. Zechariah stumbled back, his heel catching on the uneven floor. He gasped, but the air felt thin, stolen by the sudden brilliance. His hands shook, the censer slipping from his grip and clattering against the stone. He stood, trapped, his eyes wide, his body rigid with the sudden, sharp onset of dread. Gabriel stood beside the altar, his presence anchoring the swirling light. He did not move, nor did he offer a gesture of reassurance. His posture remained fixed, his gaze locked on to the man before him with a terrifying, singular purpose. "Do not be afraid," he declared. The voice did not waver. It cut through the frantic thrumming in Zechariah's ears, demanding silence. Gabriel spoke of a son, a child who would arrive as a precursor to a coming king. He laid out the timeline of this birth, detailing the impact the child would have on the nation. Zechariah gripped the edge of the altar, his knuckles white, his mind reeling as he tried to process the impossible nature of the claim. He opened his mouth to speak, to question, but the words died in his throat. His doubt was a physical weight, yet Gabriel remained entirely unmoved. The light held for a heartbeat longer, then vanished, leaving Zechariah alone in the sudden, crushing dark of the sanctuary. The scene shifted to a small, quiet home in Nazareth. The evening light was fading, casting long, soft shadows across the floorboards. Mary sat alone near the window, the rhythmic sound of her breathing the only movement in the room. The air was still, smelling faintly of dry earth and cooling stone. Suddenly, the natural order fractured. Without a sound, the space erupted in a blinding, white brilliance that defied the geometry of the room. It was not a gradual onset. It was an instantaneous displacement of reality. The light was so intense that it turned the dust motes in the air into burning sparks. It stripped the color from the walls and erased the shadows in a single heartbeat. Mary recoiled, her chair scraping harshly against the floor as she threw her hands up to shield her eyes. The sudden heat of the light pressed against her skin, forcing her to stumble backward. She hit the wall, her breath hitching in a sharp, jagged gasp. Gabriel stood in the center of the room, his presence filling every corner, forcing the very air to vibrate with a low, constant frequency. He occupied the space with an absolute, crushing weight, his form a beacon of raw energy. Mary pressed herself into the corner, her body rigid, her eyes squeezed shut. Gabriel did not wait. He stood in the center of the room, his presence anchoring the blinding light. "Do not be afraid," he said. The voice was not merely sound. It was a physical force that rippled through the air, vibrating the floorboards and rattling the ceramic bowls on the table. It acted as a stabilizer, forcing the chaotic light to hold its shape. Mary remained pressed against the wall, her hands trembling as she lowered them slightly to witness the messenger. Gabriel spoke of the Messiah. He detailed the arrival, the purpose, and the shift in the timeline of all human existence. Every word he uttered felt like a heavy stone dropped into a still pond, sending shockwaves through the small home. The walls groaned under the pressure of the revelation. The ceiling beams creaked, reacting to the sudden influx of celestial intent. This was the turning point, a moment where the finite world collided with the infinite. Gabriel delivered the decree with absolute, unwavering focus. He simply stated the truth, his voice steadying the very foundation of the room. The air remained thick, charged with the gravity of the message. Gabriel offered no comfort. He provided no explanations for the burden he had just placed upon the world. He stood for one final heartbeat, his purpose fully discharged, and then he withdrew. The light did not fade. It collapsed. It snapped back into the source, vanishing as if it had never been there. The sudden transition from blinding brilliance to the dim, natural evening light left the room feeling cold and hollow. The air, which had been vibrating with celestial frequency, went dead still. Mary remained in the corner, her hands gripping the rough plaster. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a heavy, ringing silence that pressed against the ears. Outside, the world continued its slow rotation, unaware that the trajectory of history had just been rewritten. The floorboards settled back into place with a sharp, final creak. The mission was complete. The messenger was gone. The connection severed. Gabriel did not walk away. He simply ceased to occupy the space in Nazareth. One moment, the air crackled with static and the scent of ozone. The next, the room was just a room again. But Gabriel was already elsewhere. He returned to the eternal courts where light radiates directly from the source itself. He snapped back into position, standing exactly where he had stood before. He does not sit, he does not rest. His form resumed its state of perpetual readiness, a living furnace of celestial energy burning without fuel or smoke. The air around him hummed, a low, constant vibration that marked the boundary between the infinite and the finite. He fixed his gaze toward the throne, unblinking, unmoving. The history he had just set in motion meant nothing to him now. He sought no praise for the words he had spoken. He did not linger to witness the results of the truth he had forced into the world. To look upon him was to see a bridge that never lowers, a messenger who never sleeps. He stood silent, a silhouette cut from blinding radiance, waiting. The weight of divine truth rested on his shoulders. Gabriel waited for the next order, his presence a steady, unyielding line in the unfolding story of time.